Okay, so we're gonna look at number 2. These are stacked double box plots, so box and whisker plots. So using the given information on batteries for cell phone, use complete sentences to discuss the data using this. So we have brand A and brand B, and this is battery life. So this is about how long each type of cell phone or each brand of cell phone, this could be like a Samsung, iPhone, any type of phone, and we're discussing how long their batteries last for. So we have to look at a couple of things. We need to remind ourselves what each part of the box and whisker plot stands for. So this is our minimum. This is our Q1, our Q2, Q3, and this is my maximum. Please remember that your Q2 is your median. Get it? It's in the middle. It's the line in the middle of our box and whisker plots. So that is your median. A lot of people were trying to actually find the distance, but you don't have to do that. It's right here. Another thing we need to look at is how our number line is numbered. So 2, 2.5, 3, these are all being done by halves. So in between a half is a quarter. So this is 2.25. $2, $2.25, $2.50. The in between is 2.75. So I had a lot of people making up other decimals on the test, but you do need to understand how this is broken up so that you know how to read the data on your graphs. So the first question is to use range. Range is your maximum minus your minimum. So you needed to find the range for each of the box plots. And so A goes from 2 to 7. So I did 7 minus 2, which is 5. B goes from about 6. Even though it's not directly above 6, I would say just go ahead and use 6 and you're fine. And then it goes all the way over here. But look, we've already got it numbered, 2.25. So we subtract that and we get 3.75. Now what you should do is write me 2 or 3 sentences talking about the range of each of the name brands and then a conclusion sentence on how you would tell me which brand is better to use. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to put you on pause and then come back. Okay, so this is my sentence or a couple sentences. The range for brand A is 5 hours and 3.75 for brand B. This data shows that brand B is more consistent with the battery life. Remember, consistent means that the data is hitting more in one spot instead of just being spread out. Okay. Next, we're going to move on to the median. The median for brand A is all the way up here. If we look at it, it was in between. It was a little bit lower, but we could go with 4.25. I would accept that. And then for brand B is here, 3.75. Again, you need to write me a couple of sentences describing the information for the median and then what it says or what you can conclude from that data. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I wrote the median battery life for brand A is 4.25 and 3.75 hours for brand B. Therefore, I can conclude brand B has a better battery. Okay. Next, we're going to move on to distribution. We talked about how distribution is how spread out your data is, the range. So if we look back here, we already talked about this. We already talked about how wide this data is and how more consistent brand B is. So to technically finish distribution, all you had to do was talk about how one is wider than the other, and then use your data to support your evidence. And so if you're talking about how this one is more wide, then you should talk about how its range is 5. If you're going to talk about how narrow this one is and how consistent it is, you're going to bring up that it has 3.75 hours here. And so again, all you're going to do is reiterate what you just said up here, but talk about how it's spread out, but using this data to back it up. Okay? The last question is about percent. Now, each box and whisker plot is broken up into 4 parts. This is 25%, that is 25%, that is 25%, and that is 25%. So 25, 25, 25, and 25 makes 100. So if I were to talk about this right here, the whisker and the first box, that is 50% of the data. If I were to talk about the whisker and the full box, that's 75% of my data. If I were to talk about the entire thing, that is 100% of my data. So the only percents that I should see when I asked to see about the percents of a box and whisker plot should be either 25, 50, 75, or 100. So if we look here, one conclusion that you could make, do you guys see how half of this box and whisker plot, that means 50%, is about the same size as almost 75% of brand B right here. So they're almost lined up. They're not quite lined up, but they're pretty darn close. So you could say a little bit more of 50% of brand A is actually overlapping 75% of brand B. And that is a sentence that we could write down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I put here that 50% of brand A is overlapping 75% of brand B. Or you could say that 50% of brand A is equal to, because they're the same. If they're overlapping, then they are the same. They're overlapping. Okay? So that is question 2.